Morning, these are the Chiricahua Mountains, and I'm going to break here to talk some anime.
Ghost in the Shell, Solid State Society.
Solid State Society is the third of the standalone complex Ghost in the Shell cyberpunk TV stories. This one is a movie special rather than a series, though it follows the continuity of the TV series rather than the two Ghost in the Shell theatrical movies. It takes place 2 years after the second TV series ended. Things have changed in Japan's elite covert security Section 9. Major Kusanagi, their field leader in the previous stories, has left. Contrary to what was suggested in the Ghost in the Shell theatrical movie, Section 9 didn't confiscate her cyborg body or her memories when she left. Or maybe she didn't give them a chance. Kusanagi still seems to be secretly poking around cybercrime scenes, however, and with a lot of expensive resources at her disposal. Togusa now has the Major's old job as Section 9's field leader, balancing that workload with his family life. Bato is sulking at the Major's absence and working mostly solo. The section's roster has been expanded with a large crop of rookies, and they've got new mini-tanks that just aren't as good as the old Tachikomas. The story starts with a string of apparent suicides, all by disciples of a deposed Asian military dictator who's now in exile under house arrest in Japan. Section 9 fears that those deaths are harbingers of some global terrorist act that the dictator promised when he was defeated. As with other Ghost in the Shell anime, this plot will take a lot of twists and turns along the way, and where it ends will be a long way from here. Investigations suggest there was a terrorist plot involving a micro-machine virus, as in a real contagious disease, not malware, I think. They also pick in the code name of a mysterious agent called the Puppeteer. When Bato goes in search of another terrorist hideout, he's surprised to find that the Major is already there. Despite all the bullets, it's a rather brief and low-key reunion.
What the hell are you up to?
Thanks. I'll take that now.
Hey.
Your tastes have changed. A new car?
She swiped it.
That's not really the reunion between these two that we'd expected. By the way, there are a lot of cars used in this movie because Nissan was a sponsor. I'm fine with sponsored moments in anime as long as it allows good shows to be made. The plot of Solid State Society is mostly about figuring out who the puppeteer is and what he or she wants. It seems as if the terrorist might have committed suicide because of a cyberbrain attack from the puppeteer rather than out of free will. Bato wonders if the Major herself might be the puppeteer. Section 9's investigation will lead in a lot of odd directions to the final revelation, crossing paths with Major Kusanagi again. One of the problems with Solid State Society is that it never really focuses on an actual crime. Oh, there are some crimes along the way, such as the terrorist suicides in their virus terrorist plot. And there's an assassin Section 9 will have to thwart after they figure out who his target is. And the puppeteer is even dangerous enough to launch successful cyber attacks against Section 9's headquarters and its agents. But these are only breadcrumbs leading to the main conspiracy. In the end, that conspiracy never really develops a sense of urgency or even danger. The only real moment of true tension comes about midway through the movie when Togusa and his family are placed in personal jeopardy. Other than that, there's not a lot of excitement. The climax is more like delivering a subpoena, which would be fine if the story had a real sense of disaster averted to it. One of my favorite scenes is after Togusa tracks a missing child to a forgotten senior citizen, a shriveled old man hooked into a life support bed that had me thinking of Otomo's Rujin Z again. Togusa is standing on the street while the traditional crews mop up the mess, and he becomes aware of a lot of elderly eyes watching him.
心停止確認済みです。遺体の廃棄とシステムの回収をお願いいたします。
It's true, by the way, we do have a secret society. Solid State Society is written and directed by Kenji Kamiyama, who did the same for the two standalone complex TV series. He still has most of the same creative team from Production IG as he did for those. The animation is really splendid. They've meshed fluid character movement with dynamic camera motion to create a visual experience that builds nicely on their earlier work. But it's still a TV movie and not as spectacularly gorgeous as, say, the full theatrical movie Innocence. Besides, I had the feeling that we'd seen a lot of these images before. The Major steps off a high platform to get to the ground. She jumps on top of a tank to disable it, or Bato coolly leans out of a helicopter to see the ground below. The franchise could use a little new blood. On the art side, a fresh vision. On the story side, some new characters. While there were plenty of new faces at Section 9 this time around, none of them play any part whatsoever in the story. Either they, or the less familiar members such as Ishikawa or Saito, could add something fresh to the mix. Or the authors could finally allow the existing characters to grow and change a little bit. I also thought the storytelling was unnecessarily complicated by intercutting scenes to make separate events unfold in parallel. This plot was complicated enough on its own. The lack of a visible villain with an actual personality also hurt the story. By the way, this movie's The Puppeteer shouldn't be confused with the Puppet Master from the first Ghost in the Shell theatrical movie. Those names have more of a distinction in Japanese than they do in the English translation. The music is again by Yoko Kanno. She returns more to the style of the first standalone complex TV series for this outing, mostly a soft collection of jazzy vocals, though occasionally the soundtrack shifts gears entirely to a hard metal beat. I give Solid State Society 4 stars. It's a nicely animated flick with a story featuring some familiar characters as we've come to expect. And it has a few good action scenes, but the story isn't very involving. It reminded me a lot of the compilation movies, The Laughing Man and The Individual 11, created for the 2 TV series. It's all a rush of plot, and it doesn't have time for character spotlight or human interest side stories. It's nice to see the franchise is still kicking, but it's a little bit too familiar this time around. Solid State Society is released in North America by Manga Entertainment. Their English dub is pretty good, using the same voice cast as for the TV series.
Thanks for listening.